Live with CDP Sports Talk, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet. Live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Anchor FM, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Radio Public, and TuneIn. Now, here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Live with CDP Sports Talk, Season 5, Episode 37, Episode 257 overall. Again, I want to say good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Live with CDP Sports Talk on this Monday, March 27th, 2023. Again, Live with CDP Sports Talk is sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet, 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, or give them a call at 519-824-0210 and tell them CDP or AKA Chris Palme sent you there as well. And you can also now pre-order the all-electric Cadillac Lyriq or the all-electric Silverado as well. And you can also pre-book Cadillac Lyriq ride down at the Barry Cullen Chevrolet as well, guys. Also, as always, one sec, guys, just waiting for my guest to come on. Live with CDP Sports Talk, weeknights at 8 o'clock on WQEE 99.1 FM, the key, the heartbeat of Atlanta, Southern Talk in sports. And I want to say thank you to Ryan O'Neill for believing in my show and having me on his radio station weeknights, mostly Monday to Thursdays between 8 and 9 p.m. as well. So, guys, I'm just waiting for my guest to come on. I'm looking forward to him. Forward to my guest, his second time on here. Tonight's guest is Mark McKelvie. He's a longtime Rogers TV play-by-play announcer for the Ontario Hockey League's Owen Sound Attack, and he does some occasional color analyst work for the Attack road games on radio station CFOS 560 AM in Owen Sound. And Mark is also the communications content manager for Woodbine Entertainment out of Toronto and Campbellville as well. So I'm looking forward to speaking to Mark about the Ontario Hockey League playoffs coming up, and also about the Owen Sound Attack series against the London Knights. Best of 7 series against the London Knights. London is 5-2 overall against Owen Sound in the OHL playoffs, but the Attack have won 2 out of the last 3 meetings. And this year in the regular season, Owen Sound and London were 3-3 in the regular season. So, guys, just bear with me, and hopefully my guest will be on very shortly for Live with CDP Sports Talk as well. So he's just trying to sign on now. And like I said, Mark's one of the good guys in the industry. He does a great job as the Attack TV play-by-play announcer. And he also occasionally does some road games again for their radio station in Owen Sound as well. Guys, as we're waiting for Mark to come on, guys, we'll just talk a little March Madness. San Diego State University will play against the number 9 seed Florida Atlantic in Houston, Texas on Saturday in the battle of first-time Final Four contestants. And then the Miami Heats will play against the number 4 UConn in Houston, Texas on Saturday, April 1st as well. This year's men's NCAA tournament is the first time since seeding began in 1979. No team rated better than 4 has reached the Final Four. I know Houston is number 5. So, yeah, a lot of upsets, a lot of drama, and I'm really looking forward to the Final Four games Saturday night in Houston, Texas. I think the first one starts at 5 o'clock, and the second one starts at 8 o'clock as well. Hey, as always, I want to say thank you to everybody listening to this podcast show on my audio platforms and also on WQEE 99.1 FM, the key of Metro Atlanta. And I'm going to bring on my guest right now. Good afternoon, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Chris. How are things?
Good. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Not a problem at all. Sorry you might have been a tad behind, but we're all set now and ready to go.
Yeah, no problem. Email's funny. I should have checked with you too, because sometimes emails don't end up going to where they're supposed to go. So, but again, I'm glad you were able to come on, and you must be excited about the OHL playoffs starting this week.
I am. Yeah, it feels like the season went by fairly quick. I was telling somebody that the other day that it felt like just yesterday that we were getting a new season going. So it doesn't take long. You have to enjoy the ride, and now we get to the playoffs, which can be even quicker. Hopefully, I'll be calling games for a while, but you just never know. So happy to get things going this weekend with round one.
Yeah, I think Owen Sound and London, the regular season, met 6 times, and they split the series 3-3. And then overall, this is what their 8th playoff meeting. London's up 5-2, but I believe the TAC have won 2 out of the last 3 playoff series against London.
They have. You go back a few years ago, and Owen Sound, the last time they met the London Knights, they swept them in 4 games, which I know was a pretty great accomplishment. You know, the Knights have kind of been the standard of junior hockey and where you want to be. They've had just an incredible run going back almost 2 decades now. And, you know, the Owen Sound Attack have a real lengthy playoff streak going where they've made the playoffs 12 years in a row. The only team that's got a longer streak is the London Knights. So both these hockey clubs have been playing into the spring, like I said, for a decade plus, and now they'll meet once again. And I think this is a pretty good matchup for the Attack. They're going to need to really play their best hockey, obviously, to pull the upset. But I think of the matchups they could have got, they have to be pretty happy with this one.
And you guys just finished playing Saginaw, won 6-4. Did you end up doing the game with Fred on the road?
I wasn't on the road this weekend with the team when they went to Sarnia, Flint, and Saginaw. I watched all the games, and I have to say that this team it's had its struggles in the second half of the season, but to finish on a high note the way they did with back-to-back wins in Flint and Saginaw, I think that's going to do them a lot of good heading towards the playoffs.
Overall, as a play-by-play announcer for the Attack, you've seen this team a lot. Do you feel the London matchup is a little bit better than the Windsor matchup, or it really didn't matter between those teams?
No, I think 100% this is the best matchup they could have got. You mentioned the stats from the season series, and you know the Attack had a bit of success. That being said, some of their success against the Knights came earlier in the season when London maybe hadn't found their stride. They hadn't really found the team that they were going to become. And if you just look at the way the Knights finished about the last 3 quarters of the season, they were outstanding. And I just think it took them a little bit of time to get their footing. But the Attack had a win over the Knights going back about a month ago on home ice. They play them very well. They know them very well from last season when the schedule was pretty much kept that you played just within your conference. The Attack and the Knights met I think it was 10 times last year. So you mix in the meetings they had this season. These teams know each other really well. And I think from a strategy standpoint, they can game plan for the Knights probably a little better than they could have for the Windsor Spitfires or the Sarnia Sting as it went into the last week of the season. It could have been any of those 3 teams. I just look at, and I know we'll talk a bit about this matchup and the various teams in the Western Conference, but I look at the way the Knights are built compared to Sarnia and Windsor, and I think both those teams are just juggernauts. I think the Knights are obviously very capable of going on a long playoff run, but I think they have just a few more question marks around them that if you're the Attack, you hope to exploit. And you go back to last season, Chris, the Kitchener Rangers were the 7 seed playing against the London Knights, who were the 2 seed in the first round, and Kitchener upset them. So I guess this is all just kind of bulletin board material. If you're the Attack, you put up there to give yourselves the belief that you have a fighting chance.
I know you've been involved with the league a long time, and so have I. And in the old days, if you finished 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th, you were pretty well gone in the first round in 4 or 5 games. And now I find the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th teams are capable of pulling up the upsets. And I think there might be a few upsets in the OHL playoffs in both the West and the Eastern Conference. I don't think there's going to be too many sweeps.
Yeah, you know what? And I'm not sure what the reason is. I saw somebody post that it's been almost 20 years since the last time that an 8 seed upset a 1 seed. That being said, it's not uncommon to see those 8 seeds at least steal a game from the 1 seed in the first round. You look in the Western Conference this year at a team like the Kitchener Rangers, who at the trade deadline went out and tried to bolster their lineup. They have a lot of veterans. They're much better than your traditional 8 seed. So that being said, I think they've got a tough task if they want to upset the Windsor Spitfires, but I'm not going to put it past them to really give them a fight. And I think when you think about the fact that junior hockey is such a cycle, it's almost you have to build your team for every 4 years, and maybe you're not peaking at the right time, but you've got some veterans that you realize we got to take a kick at this. We got to go for it. Maybe that's why you are finding some of those teams that finish in those spots 5 through 8. They're a little better than their record indicates. They're veterans. They've seen a lot. They're capable of stealing games and finding a way to get the job done. So it's only a good thing for the league if you have that kind of parity. Nobody wants to see blowouts in the first round. And in some sports, that is the case. But I find in the OHL, for the most part, those lower seeds do show up and give a good effort, whether they get the upset or not.
And look at the Gold Storm, the expectations. They were supposed to be one of the top teams, and they struggled really until Christmas time, and they have been playing a little bit better. And I do think they can give Sarnia a good series. I just think the Sting in a 7-game series, I still think they're going to come out of that series. But before we get on to some questions, Mark, what are your thoughts on Daryl Hunter's 900th career win as the head coach of the Knights? And I believe it's only the 3rd coach in the OHL history to win 900 games.
Yeah, I think he joins Brian Kilray. Burt Templeton is what I want to guess were the other two. Dale Hunter, I think, he had this persona a lot earlier in his coaching career in the OHL of being, quite the character. Obviously, people know him from his playing days and the nasty player, but also had that skill that he was able to display when he played in the NHL. And the job he and his brother Mark Hunter have done with the London Knights, love them or hate them, you have to respect them. And I think for the OHL, it's a good thing to have a team like the London Knights. A lot of people compare them to the New York Yankees of the OHL, but you need that. You need villains, I guess you could say, and you do need those franchises that are kind of that gold standard that everyone's trying to match or at least knock off. And when you think about the fact that this London Knights team especially, this may be one of the best coaching jobs Dale Hunter's ever done over these years. Obviously, somebody might say, his critics at least will say, well, look at the talent he's had. Of course, they're going to win a lot of games, but he has made a lot of these players. He has helped develop NHL players. He has got players to reach their potential. There's been a lot of players that have come to London with all the hype around them, and they've been able to live up to that billing. Whereas some players, and we've seen it before, they just, can have all the hype in the world, but you have to have somebody give you that help to get you over the edge. And I look at the team the Knights have this year, and it goes back to what I'm expecting to see in this series between Owen Sound and London. After about the first couple games of the season, I had a chance to see the Knights, and I said, good team. Where's the offense going to come from? Where's that superstar? Because there's always a superstar in London, but this is maybe one of their most well-balanced teams, and he's been able to get contributions throughout his entire lineup. He doesn't just look to 1 or 2 players to go out there to drive the offense, and then they'll find a way to get the job done. He looks at everybody to contribute, and that, I think, is a testament to the coaching of Dale Hunter and just how talented he is, because he's been able to get, like I said, everybody to buy in this season for this Knights team in a year where they didn't even have a 30-goal scorer and they still won a division title. I think that's very remarkable.
What do you think of some of his moves in bringing in George Diacolo, Ryan Humphrey, and Ryan Winterton from the OHL champion Hamilton Bulldogs?
Well, that's exactly it. You mentioned that they're champions, and I think that experience is invaluable. It's a big reason why I think a team like the Windsor Spitfires are just going to be so hard to knock off in the Western Conference. Going on a playoff run, getting through 3 rounds to make it to that championship series is no small feat. So to have that experience of going on a deep run, players like Diaco, Winterton, and Humphrey that you mentioned, they can come into that locker room, and on night 1 of the playoffs, there's no surprises to them. They've now seen it all, and they know what it takes to get over the hump and to lift that J. Ross Robertson trophy over their heads. So I think it was an interesting approach by the Hunters to go out and acquire players like that, because they could have gone out and made those big splashes and tried to get a Brendan Othman type player, some of those real big names that were available coming to the trade deadline, the superstars of the OHL, I guess you could call them, a Logan Morrison. Hey, he played in Hamilton. I mean, he was available, but they went out and got some character guys with a lot of skill as well. And I think that's going to suit them very well, because it goes back to what I said. I didn't think this Knights team had that 1 or 2 superstars that they could count upon to, be 100-point players to go out there and just dazzle everyone every night. Instead, they've gone with the team approach, and you need that in the playoffs. I think everybody will tell you that on any given night in the playoffs, anybody could be a hero. And a lot of the times it's some of those depth players who rise to the occasion to score that big goal or make that big play. And the Knights have got a lot of those depth players, I guess you could call them.
Are you going to be able to do some of the games on the road with Fred this weekend? I believe game 1 is Friday night in London and then Sunday afternoon at 2:00 at Budweiser Gardens.
Yes, I will be. I'll be at all the games for the playoffs here on out. Hopefully, like I said, it's a long playoff run, and we're doing lots of games. I know Fred. Obviously, he's a legendary broadcaster in the OHL, and he's actually this past season has more or less stepped aside. He's taken a year off. He had a bit of a health issue last year, so he decided just to back off. 30 plus years riding the buses, being on the road. It'll certainly do its number on you, and I commend Fred for being able to step back, because I know it probably is eating at him. I'm sure he'd love to be there, but he's taken this year just to rest. He's still doing all the home games as the PA announcer. So instead, a nice opportunity popped up for Matt Hermes, who works right alongside Fred up at 560 CFOS and Bayshore Broadcasting up in Owen Sound. And Matt's had the opportunity to be kind of carrying the load on the radio side this year and making it to all the games. And he's been a blast to work alongside. I think I worked probably close to 20 of the road games this year of the 34. So, we've created a nice chemistry on the air together, and Matt does a really good job. And, I guess you could say that Bear Radio, which was the creation of Fred Wallace, has certainly been in good hands with Matt.
Anybody watching this or listening to this podcast show want to listen to Attack Game on the radio? What time do you guys normally go on the air? Like about 15 minutes before face-off?
Yeah, we actually go on 30 minutes. We do a pregame show for a full 30 minutes, go through all the various storylines, usually have a couple of interviews, catch up with the Attack's head coach, Greg Walters, one of the players maybe on the Attack or on the opposing team, and just get everybody teed up for the matchup. And usually that 30-minute pregame show has probably got some pretty good information that Attack fans and OHL fans like to pick up on, especially around this time of the year when there's a lot of questions around players who are maybe banged up, whether they're going to be in the lineup, what's their timetable for getting back. So, we try to bring the fans as much information as we can, not just to get them ready for that game, but to keep them up to date on what's happening with Attack hockey. And then, of course, we cover the game from start to finish, and then usually wrap up probably about 15 to 20 minutes after, just kind of going through some post-game notes. So we're usually on the air for at least 3.5 hours for most of the away games. And as you mentioned, coming up on Friday night, we'll be on there at 6:30 on 560 CFOS, which you can go to the website, 560cfos.ca.
Definitely. And hopefully Fred will be at the home games in Owen Sound, hopefully.
Oh, yeah, he will be. As like I said, he's been the PA announcer all season long. Hasn't missed a beat with that, but it's probably been a bit of a shift for him to have most Friday nights now off instead of being on the road. And keep in mind, he does the morning show there in Owen Sound. So some late nights getting home and then some quick turnarounds, not getting much sleep. But Fred is, again, he's the voice of Attack hockey and Platers hockey going back to day one there in Owen Sound. So still having him a part is absolutely huge for the organization.
What's the overall consensus of what's the fans feel like? Are they optimistic that the Attack can take out the Knights? And do you know by any chance how the ticket sales are going for the games in Owen Sound?
Yeah, I would, to answer the first part of your question there, I would say if you ask the fans going into this past weekend, there probably wasn't a lot of optimism. This team didn't live up to the expectations that they had on them going into the regular season. You look back at last year, you had a rookie in Colby Barlow who scored 30 goals. He certainly lived up to the expectations and exceeded them, finishing the year with 46 goals. And if he hadn't have got hurt in the last couple of weeks and had to miss some games, he probably would have hit the 50 goal mark in his draft eligible season, which would have been incredible. But a few of the other players didn't necessarily get to their point totals or didn't really blow by them the way that you would have thought. And the team didn't even match their number of wins from last year. So I think it's safe to say there's been a bit of disappointment there in Owen Sound. That being said, that can all be fixed with an upset victory in round one. I think a lot of people aren't waving the white towel just yet, and they aren't giving up on this team because there's just too much talent. And that's what I keep coming back to. Despite them having their struggles, despite them basically being a 500 hockey team and actually below 500 for the second half of the season. I just look at what they've got and they show glimpses of brilliance. So I think the team will be all right. As for ticket sales, that's the one tough thing about the OHL playoffs in round one is if you're not the higher seed, you don't necessarily get those preferred dates to kick off the series. You mentioned London hosting games on Friday and Sunday. Those are familiar days for them. They should do very well. The Attack's home dates are Tuesday and Thursday for games 3 and 4. Not traditionally your traditional home nights. That being said, the Attack have played a couple of Tuesdays. They do play a lot of Wednesdays throughout the regular season, so fans are familiar with that. And they catch a bit of a break with the way that the playoff dates fall this year, because that Thursday night for game 4 actually comes up the day before Good Friday. So it's a holiday for a lot of people. So I think the ticket sales will be strong. They had a great turnout all season long. On the final Saturday home game, it was a sellout, 3,200 plus. So I think it's one of those fan bases that whatever night of the week you're playing, they're going to turn out and support really well. And you have to think as well, Chris, Knights fans usually travel pretty well, and I'm sure they'll be in attendance at the Bayshore.
I was going to say, I've never been to a game in Owen Sound, and from what I saw in that TikTok video I posted about the Bayshore Harry Lumley Arena, it looks like a beautiful facility, and they've really made some nice changes to it. And I believe it's the smallest arena in the OHL at 3,400 seats.
It is. It's about to become the second smallest when Hamilton officially moves to Brantford. So we kind of lose that distinction, which maybe that's good or bad. That being said, I think, and I've heard people throughout the organization always say this, might be the smallest market in the OHL, but it's got the biggest heart. And I truly do believe that. You look at the building at the Bayshore, it's got character. A lot of the newer buildings in the OHL, they're kind of cookie cutter. You don't necessarily have that home ice advantage the way that you do at the Bayshore, where you have the low ceilings, the fans are right on top of the players. Opposing players will always say it's one of the toughest buildings to come play in because it's just so loud. When that crowd gets rocking, like I said, for a smaller building, it makes a ton of noise. The noise just vibrates, and it's a tough place to play. And it's got its quirks. The boards are very lively. Opposing teams, you'll see them in the warm-up kind of practicing where they're firing some pucks just to see how the bounces are, but you can never predict them at the Bayshore. The stanchions, there always seems to be one awkward one in the corner. They'll pop a puck out towards the slot. So it could be a nightmare for goalies when they come out to play the puck. And as a broadcaster, we hang right above basically center ice. We have this basically, it almost looks like a portable or a bin that was attached. I'm not even sure how they built it, but it leans right over top of the penalty boxes, and we're looking straight down at the action. You don't get a much closer feel than that anywhere else in the league. I guess we'll see what Brantford's like. So it's a pretty neat spot.
Obviously, you like Owen Sound for broadcasting, but what are some of your favorite other OHL arenas to broadcast games from? And what are your thoughts on the First Ontario Center's press box where you got to go up a catwalk?
Yeah, that one, if you're afraid of heights, it certainly will test you. I'm not a big fan of heights. That being said, they don't necessarily get me trembling or get me shaking. So I don't mind it all that much. I actually find that the catwalk in Oshawa, I find that one a little more difficult to do, as it just doesn't seem to be as much structure around you. I know you're safe up there, but you basically feel like you could just look down and you drop something, it'll go right to the ice. But those are some neat experiences. We only get to do them a couple of times a season, at least broadcasting games for Owen Sound, because we only go over to the Eastern Conference teams on the road once. I'd have to say from a broadcast standpoint, I find, and it very well, I find the Sleeman Center calling games in Guelph, that has got to be one of the best broadcast locations for the opposing radio. We're sitting right front row there in that press box, right at center ice, almost leaning right over the penalty box. Like I said, maybe not as close as it is in Owen Sound, but you've got great views of the ice. You can just sit right there and look left to right, and there's no obstruction. So that one certainly is up there as one of the best spots to broadcast a game. I'm trying to think of a few others. There's some teams now that have got you kind of almost in the corner. I know that's kind of the situation in Windsor, and Ottawa is a little unique as well. But I would say for the best broadcast spots, I would definitely put Guelph up there. And Then one that I really enjoy because it's not necessarily the best broadcast spot, but it's got some character would be Barrie at the Sadlin Arena. You just walk up the stairs, and when you get to the final row of seats, you just go through kind of an entrance and you're into the press box. And when you're calling games, the fans are literally sitting right in front of you. So usually it's good for some people watching or when the Attack score a goal, if we get a little excited, the fans quickly will turn around and glare at you. So that one's a little unique.
Definitely. Now, I wanted to ask you this too, Mark. The Attack, who is the starting? Who's going to be the starting goalie for the Attack in this series?
That's a great question. I'm not even sure the Attack know that. Goaltending has been a big question mark for this team, which is really too bad because I didn't think it would be an issue going into this season. They had an overage netminder in Nick Chenard, who I thought performed very well last year. He took over the number one spot midway through last season when they traded Matt Guzda off to the Barrie Colts. Nick really embraced that number one spot. He had a great showing last year in the playoffs, and he started this season well, but he suffered an ankle injury and took him out for a little bit of time. And when he came back, I just don't think he ever got his game back. He's looked a little slow, and we know goaltending is so much what goes on between the ears. And I just wonder for Nick Chenard, he just never really got his confidence back to where it once was. And I still have a belief that he can find that game. Obviously, as I mentioned, he's an overager in this league, so he doesn't have much time left. So I really hope he does find that game because Nick's a really good kid, and I hope he can have some good success here to cap off his OHL career. His backup, Corbin Votary, was the third goalie last season that moved into the backup role after the trade of Matt Guzda. We only saw glimpses of him last year, but he's very athletic. And this year, I thought he's taken some great strides forward. Maybe not ready to be the number one just yet, but the opportunity could be there for him. And I think he, like I said, has shown some flashes of brilliance at times. So it's going to come down to those two. They have a rookie goaltender, Carter George, who's playing Junior B right now with the St. Mary's Lincolns. And unfortunately, some people that follow the OHL might know this story, but Carter George, he came up to Owen Sound and was just brilliant. He played 10 games for the Attack this year. He won 7 of those games. He had a low goals against average of just over 2, a save percentage, I think, of about .930. And realistically, I think everyone would agree right now he gives the Attack the best chance to win. Unfortunately, he was on an AP. He was an affiliated player, which means he's essentially a call-up. And because he was signed to one of those cards, he can only play 10 games, at least 10 until his Junior B season comes to an end. It hasn't come to an end yet. St. Mary's is on, I think, to their conference finals in the Junior B loop. So until they're eliminated, he has to stay there in St. Mary's. Once he's eliminated, his team's done their season, he can come back to Owen Sound, and Owen Sound can put him in net. I just don't think the timing's going to match up well because, as I mentioned, St. Mary's has another series coming up. They're going to be playing against Leamington. It's probably going to start maybe a day before the Attack begin their first round series against London. So unlikely that it's going to end really in time for Carter George to come back up, which is too bad because he performed really well. And I think he exceeded all expectations. And the nice thing is, to your point, I can guarantee next year the Attack have a pretty good idea of who the number one is going to be. So goaltending shouldn't be an issue going forward for the next few years.
That might be a deciding factor in this series is the goaltending and who has the more consistent. So I have to give London the edge right now with Brett Bouchou, who's one of the best goalies in the league. But is there any chance the Attack could rotate goalies game by game, or you think they're going to just pick somebody and stick with them?
I think their hope is whoever they give the reins to for game one will take that and perform well going forward and maybe can be the guy. That being said, they haven't seen that lately. They haven't seen one of those guys step up and grab that number one spot. Corbin Votary was actually out for a little bit. He had mono, so that sidelined him for several weeks. He only came back in the last couple of weeks, so he's got a little bit of game action, but I think it's safe to say maybe he hasn't got his game back to the level where it was when he went down because he was playing really well, and it looked like he wasn't embracing and grabbing that number one spot. So maybe a few more reps, he's going to be there. We'll have to wait and see, but the other thing is it's probably pretty easy for the coaches as well that if you drop a game, you go to the other guy just to shake things up. You get both goaltenders in. And like I said, you just hope that one catches fire because that's all you need. You just need the goaltender to catch fire. And not everybody can be a goalie in the OHL. It takes a pretty good talent. So even as I said, maybe these players haven't played to the level that we think they're capable of, but they are capable of it. So maybe they will find it. To your other point, though, if Brett Brochu ever goes down, boy, the London Knights have a backup, Zach Bowen, who had an incredible year as well. He had the best goals against average for a rookie goaltender. So nice situation to be in if you're Dale Hunter and the Knights, that should Brochu, who is certainly the man, have any issues, they've got a nice backup to count upon.
Definitely, and goaltending is huge. Now, this I wanted to ask you as well, Mark. What do you like about the attack heading into the playoffs, and what are some players that have stepped up their game this season? Obviously, Kobe Barlow has with 46 goals and 33 assists, 79 points. But who are some other players to watch on the attack in this series?
It's a good question. I think a lot of the focus certainly looks up front at players like Barlow, but I'll start with the back end because their defense needs to be real strong to have success. And a couple of players have really stepped up their game this year. Teos Jordan, he was a late round draft pick a couple of years ago who just made the team last year. Kind of came in as that seventh defenseman. And here by the end of this season, he's really become a top pairing D-man. He had a great season for the attack. He had 15 points. Points necessarily isn't going to be the number one stat you look at with him. I look at his plus minus. He was a plus 10. So for a second-year D-man who got elevated in the lineup to have to play against a lot of the opponent's best players, I think to finish as a plus 10 is very impressive. And I feel very comfortable when he's on the ice. Another defenseman is Nolan Seed, who was originally a first-round draft pick back in 2018. It's not too often that you do see those first round picks make it to their overage season, but that's the case that we have here with Nolan. And when you look at the way that Nolan, his game has gone to another level this season, I think he certainly deserves all kinds of accolades. To me, I think he's been the unsung hero for this team. Highly touted coming into the league, maybe hadn't reached those expectations in his first few years, but I also have to think that losing that entire season due to COVID, that was smack dab in the middle of what would have been a 5-year career in the OHL. That certainly will stunt your development. And I think this year he has really found his game. He had 33 points, finished as a plus 18, best plus minus, one of the best plus minuses on the team. That's quite a turnaround for a player that was a minus last year. And goes back to what I said about Teos Jordan. When Nolan Seed's on the ice, I feel really comfortable, whether that's carrying the puck or trying to shut down opponents in the defensive zone. So D's going to have to be really good for the attack. They gave up a lot of goals in the second half of the season, so they need to game plan very well to try and shut down the Knights. Looking up front, you mentioned about Colby Barlow in the season. He had 79 points. He's been banged up the last couple of weeks. All signs point towards him being back for game number 1. That's huge because he has the puck on his stick an awful lot. He really drives the play, and he had one of the highest shots on goal totals in the league. So, for a player that scores 46 goals, he had nearly 300 shots. You can imagine, like I said, just how impactful he is in a game. And he can really be one of those impact players, a make or break kind of player. So I'll look to Colby Barlow if he can hopefully not miss a beat from being out a couple of weeks. Maybe he's fresh. Hopefully that injury isn't lingering and he'll be ready to go. But as well, they need to have some of their other, what you would call them, notable forwards, some of their top 6 forwards really contribute at a real good rate. A player like Cedric Guindon was a 30-goal scorer in his rookie year, only got 22 goals this year. He'll be the first to tell you that maybe goal scoring isn't the number one aspect of his game. Maybe he is more of a playmaker, but like I said, he's another one of those players that has the puck on his stick an awful lot. So I think he can be a big-time impact player for the attack, and he also takes a lot of their important face-offs. Denny Gore is a veteran in this league now. Maybe back as an overager next year, but maybe he's the kind of player that could get a pro contract and not be back in the OHL next year. So this is his moment to shine as well. And then they have a Slovakian forward named Servac Petrovsky, who had a great rookie season, very similar to what I said about Cedric Guindon. Scored nearly 30 goals in his rookie year. He had 28 goals. This year he only had 24. He just eclipsed his point total from last season. He got 55 points. The year before he had 54. I would say his season was a little bit of a disappointment. That being said, I thought he played some of his best hockey down the stretch. So hopefully he can carry that into the playoffs. So you have to get contributions from everyone. That's the most important thing. And hopefully this team will in order to have success against the Knights. But it does come down to having clutch players. And Colby Barlow is certainly that. He led the league in game-winning goals with 12.
Overall, what's your thoughts on the direction of this franchise, and what are some of your keys to a possible attack upset to win this series against the London Knights?
Yeah, I will start with that part first. I think in order to upset London, the attack need to take advantage of home ice. When they have games at the Bayshore, they have to convert. They have to get off to good starts. They have to use that home crowd to their advantage and hopefully secure the victories in those home games. Then it comes down to, can you steal one at the Budweiser Gardens? And this team has won at the Budweiser Gardens this season. So that needs to be in the back of their mind that they're capable of doing that. On the ice, they need to be the team that's controlling the play when it comes to puck possession. They have to really limit their turnovers. They need to clean up their play in their own zone, because at times it's looked very scrambly. So if they can, kind of clean that up, I'm not too worried about the offense. The goals will come, but they need to focus on defense first, help their netminders out, and put a little confidence in their goaltenders as well. Because sometimes I think it shows that this team is kind of fragile at times. And when they give up a goal, maybe they get a little down. So they need to kind of find that confidence, because they're a team that doesn't lack confidence, at least when you talk to a lot of these players. But sometimes as a unit, it seems that they do. So hopefully they can limit the turnovers. And like I said, you just got to protect home ice if you want to upset London. And again, the one thing it'll come down to, you mentioned it, I give the edge goaltending to the Knights. On defense as well, I think it's maybe slight advantage there for the Knights. But the forward groups, as much as the Knights have 4 lines they can roll at you, I think high-end talent, I think Owen Sound can maybe outmatch them. I think a Colby Barlow, a Denny Gordon, Cedric Guindon, Servac Petrovsky, I think they can maybe be the difference makers when it comes to the matchup between the forwards. So if you're the attack, you just have to follow the game plan, have some trust in your coaches who are going to give them, hopefully, the map to success, and you got to play it to a T. It'll be a real tough task, but I think this team is capable of really pushing London to the brink and hopefully spoiling that upset, because I think a lot of people had this attack team pegged for winning a round this year after they went 7 games in round 1 last year. So to your other point about what is the future of this team, what do I see for the future of this team? I really thought they were in this window right now where they can win. After last year, we saw a tremendous season from a lot of their youngsters who were only in their first season in the OHL, which meant you've got a couple more years with those guys. They've also got a nice nucleus when it comes to some of their older players. They're going to have some tough decisions next year when it comes to their overagers, but I think no matter who they decide to keep, the 3 players that they decide to go with as overagers, they're impact players, and that's what you need. You think you need your overagers to be impact players. You can't just have tag-alongs who are good players, but not impact players. And I think they'll be okay. So I look at next year as the kind of year where the attack have to look at it as this is their chance to win. I think it can be tough to make that decision to go all in, but this is the year to do it, I would say, would be next year. I don't think Colby Barlow will be back after next season. He's going to be a top 15 pick in the NHL draft coming up this June. After that, I think he'll play one more year in the OHL. He's certainly going to be on Canada's World Junior roster next year. And then next year, what I look at is, that's your year. You've got all these pieces, good overagers and some now veterans who know how to score in this league, and a good young goaltender in Carter George. I think you got to go for it. So I think the future is very bright, but I think there's going to be a lot of decisions that need to be made going into next season. This isn't a team that necessarily looks to go all in. They want to be successful each and every year, but boy, I think with the pieces they got, it's awfully hard not to put all your cards and all your chips in next season and just go for it.
Where do you rank Colby Barlow in terms of being one of the best players in the OHL? And how much has he improved his game this year? What have you noticed a lot more from him this year than last year? Is it just overall confidence?
Yeah, I would say his defensive game, how responsible he is in his own zone. You can tell that he has certainly made a lot of strides to improve that area of his game, which I don't think ever was poor. I think it was really good, actually, and it's even better now. So he's trying to become a well-rounded player. As well, his shot is just lethal. I think he has the best shot in the league, and that's saying something for a player who is only 17 years old coming into this season. He is just a man out there at times for a kid who comes from Aurelia and came into this league as I would think a lot of people maybe weren't as familiar as they would have been. There's the kind of player that I think Owen Sound is very lucky that there wasn't really much hockey being played during that COVID year, because they got him at number 8. With the shot he has, I can't see any way he would have still been on the board at number 8 if he'd played a true under 16 season playing for the Toronto Marlboros in the GTHL. So I would say the attack were very fortunate in that case, and he's a great leader, and I will chalk that up to probably just the way that he was brought up, because for a young man, he really exemplifies what a leader should be. I think he probably is vocal at the right times with his teammates, but he leads by example on the ice. The saying I always go to, he takes the bull by the horns, and he just goes out there and he can just take over at times. So I have him up there as one of the elite players in this league. I don't think you would be wrong this year when you go to vote for player of the year, for most outstanding player of the year, as the award is titled in the OHL, if you gave a vote to Colby Barlow. Probably not going to win, probably going to go to a Matthew Maggio, maybe even a Brant Clark, who only played half the year but was just dominant. But I think next season Colby Barlow will be in that conversation. He certainly deserves to be in that conversation as well. Chris, I think one thing that you got to mention when you talk about Colby is the fact that going into this year, after scoring 30 goals as a 16-year-old, expectations were really high. And it could have been kind of that sophomore slump, that second year where maybe things don't continue to go as upwards as you were expecting. And that had been natural because it's a lot to put on a young man's shoulders, especially when they slap the C on his chest just prior to the season. That's a lot of extra pressure, and it's a draft year and there's all eyes on him. There's scouts in the building every night, but this didn't seem to faze him. So just seeing him put up the points and play the way he did this year, I'm one of the biggest fans of Colby Barlow, and I'm really excited to see what his future has in store for him.
You're just mentioning the second-year sophomore thing, and I noticed with the Storm this year, Cam Allen, I don't think he's still a tremendous player, but I think the expectations, you're right, sometimes that second year, it's hard from the first year, and I noticed that with Cam Allen this year.
Yeah, I 100% I believe in it. Not every player is going to be able to, embrace that challenge and get over it right at the start. It takes some time. And in the case of Cam Allen, I think he found his game in the second part of the year. But you look at what he had to deal with early in the season. Now he is playing on that top pairing for the Guelph Storm. He is going up against, and especially D is a little bit different, but he's going up against the other team's best players, their best line, trying to shut them down. It's a tough task. You saw some frustration. He took some unnecessary penalties. His plus-minus rating was not very good early in the year. Felt like he was just flustered. And, it's a lot to put on his shoulders. But we probably saw his character as well, which I'd have to think is pretty high because I think he got it figured out as the year went on. He didn't let this entire season become a disappointment and become a waste. He was able to salvage it in the second half of the year. So I got to commend him and give him his props for finding his game in the second half of the season. But it is tough. It is really tough.
All right, and I'm going to ask you this question. What are your thoughts on the Attack acquiring former Guelph Storm player and Ice Dog Matt Pappas from Niagara this season, and how well has he fit in with the team?
I think it was one of those trades that it goes back to a lot of people questioning what the heck's going on with the Niagara Ice Dogs. The Attack didn't have to spend as much as the Ice Dogs did to get Pappas from the Storm. So if you're following me there, he didn't spend much time in Niagara. He only played 6 games. And, the Attack gave up basically, I think it was 1 draft pick. They get Pappas from Niagara. Meanwhile, I believe it was like a 3rd and 5th round pick that the Storm got when they traded him to the Ice Dogs originally. So a little bit of a head scratcher there, but he's been a real nice overager for the Attack this year. The kind of player that maybe wasn't as noticeable all season long, but I thought he came up in some big moments. He, as a veteran in this league, found the right occasions to step up and to be that leader, to score a big goal for this team. So that's the kind of, like I said, you need your overagers to be impact players, and I'd put them in that category. I think it was a real good move by Dale DeGray, who has a great track record of acquiring a real impactful overagers over the years. So I think that was a nice pickup, especially early in the season when the Attack, they were still pretty young up front. They didn't have a lot of game experience with some of their forwards, so they needed a veteran, and I think that was a good pickup. And hopefully, Matthew can finish off his OHL career in style in the playoffs because he'll be counted upon. He really played, I think, at different parts in the season up and down the lineup, but that's a nice piece to have. It's nice to have a versatile player like that if you're the coach to look at, that you could throw him up on the first line, or if you've got to play him in that bottom 6, you know what you're going to get.
Hey, Mark, are you good for a little more time?
Yep. Good to go.
Okay. Since we were talking about the Ice Dogs briefly, what are your thoughts on Evan McGrath, the 2003 Memorial Cup champion with the Kitchener Rangers, being announced as the head of hockey operations for the Ice Dogs today?
Yeah, that was a really interesting move to see. As I was just mentioning the fact that this Ice Dogs team just seemed to lack some direction. I think it's pretty obvious that their owner and general manager Darren DeDobler was taking a lot of heat throughout the season. I'm not going to be one to sit here and pile on. It's his first year at the helm of an OHL organization. And hey, 1 year doesn't make or break a legacy. It's just the start. And this team, who knows, maybe, things could really turn around next season. Obviously, they're going to have some pretty good draft picks in the first round. You think about the fact of where they finished; they've got great odds to get the first overall pick. But then as well, their first round pick from last season, Sam Dickinson, didn't report. They traded him to London before the season began, so they're going to pick up a compensatory pick that they'll be able to use early in that first round. So they're going to get 2 good players. So that's nice for them. That helps with a rebuild. And, you're trying to put your own fingerprints on a team. And it felt like every day they were making trades. But, yeah, it's probably really frustrating for the fan base there. But, again, it's one of those, I'm sure there's a long-term approach to all of this. And to adding in somebody with the hockey mind, and I'm sure the resume that Evan McGrath has, that's going to help. And maybe it's all part of a grand plan for the Ice Dogs, because I would have to think it's pretty tough to be an owner and GM in this league. You hear now a lot of those old-time folks in the league who were GM and coach say that it's almost impossible to do it these days unless you've really got some good right-hand people. So I'm sure that's what the Ice Dogs are looking towards, is kind of building that group around Darren Dobler to help lead this team in the right direction. And keep in mind, they are one of the teams that bid for the Memorial Cup next year, so they're still in that hunt. I know we're going to find out pretty soon who's going to be hosting it. So if it does land in St. Catharines, obviously the Ice Dogs are going to have to really have a real solid game plan for how they're going to tackle this next season.
They do have a good fan base. I haven't been to the arena, but I've heard good things about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think bringing Evan McGrath does give the organization some credibility, and I think stability is what they need as well. And since I have you on here as well, what are your thoughts on this new draft system for the OHL draft lottery?
Yeah, I think I don't mind it. I think the way they did it in the past made sense. The Ontario Hockey League, just like a lot of junior hockey leagues, as I mentioned earlier, it's all a cycle. So you shouldn't necessarily be finding yourself in that bottom 4 or at the bottom of the league too many years in a row. If you draft well, you build well, you carry usually kind of a good group of players around the same age, and you kind of ride with them through that cycle. And then it's usually time to start rebuilding. So I think it makes sense, though, just to avoid any teams that are maybe trying to tank. I don't really believe in that in junior hockey as much, because we don't know the players as well. Maybe a Connor McDavid is kind of a bit of an outlier, or a Michael Misa, those exceptional status players. Obviously, everybody knows about them and the impact they're probably going to have. But those are kind of generational types. Most years, tanking not going to make a lot of sense in the OHL. And don't forget, your revenue line usually is attendance and getting fans in the building. So you got to put a good product out on the ice. But I think just for the sake of keeping things interesting, why not have a draft lottery? I don't think it hurts. There's usually not too much separating those bottom 4 teams. And the way the odds were weighted, I think the worst team in the league's got a 40% chance. So you still got a pretty good shot at landing that first overall pick.
All right. And this leads to my next question, Mark. Just overall thoughts on General Manager Dale DeGray and Greg Walters and the attack coaching staff overall.
Well, look at the job Dale DeGray has done since he came into Owen Sound. He followed Mike Fuda after his run as a GM of the attack. He came in, and when he came in, the cupboards were pretty bare. And within the first few years, had this organization really heading in the right direction. And by 2011, they won an OHL championship. And as I mentioned, they've got now 12 straight years where they've eclipsed 30 wins. In all those years, they've made the playoffs. A lot of people will maybe be critical of that stat and say, why are you so proud of having 30 win seasons? There's 68 games in a season. So 34 and 34, you're 500. If you don't even get to 34 wins, you're not even 500. But why is it so important? And I think it's important because it is one of the smallest markets in the CHL, the smallest in the OHL. This is the kind of market that I think the team means so much to. They live in and breathe attack hockey, do the folks up in Owen Sound and the surrounding area. They want to cheer on a good team. They want to see their team have success. And I think the ownership group and GM Dale DeGray are focused on making sure that they always put out a good product every single year. a team that the community can be proud of. And the job they've done to consistently be competitive, I think deserves all kinds of respect. So I think Dale DeGray has done a great job. To your point earlier about what I think of the future of the team and how I think next year they probably have to be all in. That hasn't necessarily been Dale DeGray's style. So it'll be interesting to see how he tackles next season. That being said, if there's one man that I believe could probably find a way to go all in and still keep his team with the kind of assets that will allow them to be successful in the years after and to be competitive, I think it could be him. As for head coach Greg Walters, yeah, I'm a fan of his style. I think, he expects a lot out of his players, but at the same time, they seem to buy in and they'll play that kind of physical and that rugged style that I think he's a believer in, as well as mixing in the skill. I always thought that he did a really great job in all of his stops before he got to Owen Sound. I had a real good chance to see him as a coach and general manager in the OJHL, where he spent a long time with the Georgetown Raiders. I used to help out with the team in Milton for several seasons, and we saw Georgetown an awful lot, and he always had great hockey clubs there. He was executive of the year at one point in the OJHL, might have even been for the entire Canadian Junior Hockey League at that Tier 2 level. So he had a great program there. His time in Oshawa, I always considered the Generals at that time to be a very Western Conference style of team. I've been a believer, and it's starting to shift a bit now, but for a good stretch in the OHL, I always thought that the Western Conference, there was just different hockey compared to the Eastern Conference. I thought in the Western Conference, it was a lot tougher. You had to be physical. There was rough games over on that side with a tremendous amount of skill. Whereas some nights in the Eastern Conference, and maybe you chalk it up to some of the teams there, some of the fan bases that don't necessarily turn out in droves, some quieter buildings, didn't seem to have that same kind of bite. But the Oshawa Generals always did. And I think that he really made his team play that kind of hockey where they were accountable. They had to go out and they had to put in big efforts. So I thought he was the right man to come in and be the head coach with the Owen Sound attack. And, the fan base might be a little flustered and a little rattled with the way the rest of this season went and not living up to the expectations. But I don't think 1 year makes or breaks, a legacy, as I mentioned earlier. So I look at head coach Greg Walters and his coaching staff around him. I've got a lot of belief in them. I think they'll be all right. And I think, you see the way that, I think he really sticks up for his players out there. A lot of times you'll see him get the shouting matches with the other team's coaches. He has his players' backs, and I think that's very important. And I just like the style of hockey that the attack play.
And Owen Sound's coming up on 35 years, which is hard to believe. I feel so old because I remember when they first moved to Owen Sound in 1989, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, they won't last more than 2 or 3 years in Owen Sound," and they proved us wrong on that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know it's been over 30 years. That's right. And I think if anybody saw the festivities that went on up in Owen Sound for Hockey Day in Canada, that would be a good indication of just how passionate that community is for the game of hockey and for their Owen Sound attack. It's what they love. And this is a team that, like I said, they are the community, right? A Saturday night, what are you going to do up in Owen Sound? Well, you're going to go to the game. As much as it's going to see a hockey game, it's also like going to church in a sense. That's how I always look at it. It's almost like a religion up there, and it's what people get out for their social outing on a Saturday night, to see all their friends, to see their family, and to have a good time. So it means a lot to the community up there. I'm so thankful that the team has made it this long, and a lot of that goes to obviously the fan base, but also just the great people behind the scenes and the organization, whether that's the owners right down to the front office staff to everybody that contributes. They got a great crew up there.
All right. I just got a few more questions for you, Mark, if you're still good for time. Can you just tell us about your Hockey Day and Owen Sound experience with Rogers and meeting Hockey Night in Canada, longtime host Ron McLean? What was that experience like?
It was awesome. That entire week, there were so many festivities going on. It's something we're going to remember forever. Owen Sound had been selected to be the host city for Hockey Day in Canada a few years back, but unfortunately COVID kept delaying it. They never got that opportunity to host until finally this past January, and the city, I don't think it ever looked as great as it did on that week. And that, especially that day, that 12-hour broadcast up in Owen Sound, led by Ron McLean. There was stuff going on all week long, events that people could take part in. I'm sure for the minor hockey players, they had opportunities to meet some NHL alumni, to meet some really great people in the game of hockey, as well. The women's hockey game, hockey got a great opportunity to be on display. There was a professional game up there at the Bayshore on the Saturday, as well as a university contest between the University of Guelph and the University of Waterloo. The minor hockey teams got chances to go through some skill clinics. On the Friday, there was a high school game for the boys and the girls, a packed Bayshore, about 3,000 people cheering them on. So there was a lot of memories made that week. And to your point, you mentioned I had the opportunity to actually go on Sportsnet and get interviewed by Ron McLean. So that was just a huge thrill as a hockey fan who grew up here in Canada, watching Hockey Night in Canada every Saturday night. That's the man that we watched every Saturday night, and to have a chance to have him put a microphone in front of me and to talk to him, it's something I'll always remember. So going to cherish those memories for a long time.
All right. And I wanted to ask you this as well, Mark. Again, my condolences, but can you tell us how much your late grandfather, Ray McKelvie, meant to your family and to junior A hockey in Owen Sound?
Yeah, it's been a tough year having lost him back in December. It doesn't feel the same just yet going up to the Bayshore, and it probably never will. I went to the Bayshore basically from the time I was born until now, and going to games. There was a time when I was really young, going up to games in Owen Sound. A lot of it was me being a hockey crazy kid who just wanted to go see hockey, and to have a chance to get up close and personal and get to see it right there. That was awesome. But as I got older, I stayed involved and eventually joined the Rogers crew. And it's a lot, it's a lot of kilometers on the vehicle every winter, driving from Guelph, or at one point from Milton up to Owen Sound. But I think, some could say, well, why wouldn't you have tried to find an opportunity closer to home? But ultimately, it comes back to family and having the opportunity to spend a lot of those Saturdays throughout the winter with my grandparents. We lost my grandmother a few years ago, but then between that time, spending time with my grandfather, heading down to the rink with him, going out for breakfast or going out after the game for a bite to eat and just talking hockey. Those are memories I'll cherish forever. So it's been difficult, but again, he had an opportunity to leave a legacy and to make a huge impact in that community that's going to live on forever. So seeing his little fingerprints, his fingerprints on everything, whether that be big or small, big as the attack or as small as, contributions to various charities or local initiatives. I'm tremendously proud. And as to your point about the hockey up in Owen Sound, I think it's probably been pretty well documented. Just the role that he played in getting junior hockey to Owen Sound and being a big believer in that community. And that's something that with his passing, just doing a little more digging and talking to people, you just realize how much he loved his community, how proud he was of that community. So to have had an OHL team there now 30 plus years, for him to have been involved from day one and to see it grow to where it got to, I know just how much it meant to him. It was his life. He was down at the rink every single day. So I hope that, myself, whether, I'm calling games for the attack for a long time or a short time, I'm always going to find my way back up to Owen Sound. And I'm always going to make sure that we're around the arena there in one capacity or another, and keeping that McKelvie name going.
Hopefully one day they'll have a statue of him outside the arena.
Knowing him, he would not want that kind of,
no.
That kind of,
very humble
play, right? Very humble. Exactly that. That being said, I think he deserves all the accolades in the world, even though he probably would be blushing about it.
Okay. And I'm just going to wrap this up. Are you still good for a few more minutes?
Yep.
Mark? Okay. Because, I do love to talk. So this question I wanted to ask you, because I didn't ask you the last time you come on my show, but can you just tell my audience about your role with Woodbine Entertainment Group and the work you do with Standardbred Horse Racing as the communications content manager briefly?
Yeah, I've been with Woodbine Entertainment now since 2014. Grew up in the horse racing industry with both my parents involved, so I had a natural introduction to that, and really took a liking to the industry at a young age, and that developed into a career at this point. I went to Humber College for journalism, really focused on broadcasting, but took an interest as well in the writing side of things. And coming out of school, I had an opportunity to join the communications team at Woodbine, covering the harness racing and the standardbred racing. For several years, we were going back and forth between racing at Mohawk for a good chunk of the season, Mohawk in just outside of Milton, and then we'd go to Woodbine in Toronto. So I've been at that for nearly a decade now, coming up on 9 years in June. But over the last few years as well, my role has expanded, not just as a member of the communications team, but taking on a manager position. And now at this point, I'm overseeing both standardbred and thoroughbred racing. So I'm splitting my time between Woodbine and Mohawk once again. So back and forth we go, especially at busy parts of the season through the summer and into the fall. And I really enjoy it. I'm a big fan of the sport. And what it comes down to is very much similar to why I spend a lot of my weekends through the winter in hockey arenas. It's because you enjoy it. It doesn't feel like work a lot of the time. So I'm very happy there at Woodbine Entertainment and continuing to contribute to hopefully growing the game of horse racing as well. Just as hockey's probably getting ready to wind down here as we go into the playoffs, the busy part of the horse racing season is coming up. So there's really no downtime for me, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
And overall, how do you see horse racing in Ontario right now? Do you see a lot of positives?
I do. I think, though, that there's some big opportunities and some challenges right now in trying to grow the sport. COVID really wreaked havoc like it did on a lot of industries. It really took its bite out of the horse racing industry in Ontario. We were very fortunate. We were able to, for the most part, continue racing. There were some shutdowns at times, but when we came back racing, we were racing in front of closed buildings, no fans allowed. And I think it's the old out of sight, out of mind. So when you have people that would come out to the racetrack often during the summer, having to find other things to do, and they haven't been to the racetrack for a few years, it doesn't become necessarily that go-to option for their entertainment dollars. So we have to do a good job now of trying to get people back out to the track. That being said, on a wagering front, and obviously that's where a lot of the money comes from in the horse racing industry, wagering's at an all-time high on racing at Woodbine and Mohawk. So that a lot of that has to do with just the advancement of technology, people being able to place bets from their phone or on their computer. Watching from home has really changed the horse racing game. So now it's about embracing that, as we've done a pretty good job, and now taking that to another level and continuing to grow. With sports betting becoming legalized in Ontario, there's going to be some opportunities there as well to hopefully integrate horse racing and continuing to raise its profile and increasing those wagering dollars. And so basically it's kind of two parts to it, right? There's the side of the business, which is making sure the racing is going and the wagering strong. But as well, now there's going to be a big focus on just trying to get people out to the track, which is usually a bit of a different demographic and a different audience than what you're getting for the average person sitting at home playing online.
And speaking of that, Steve Fitzsimmons is no longer with Hanover Downs, and now he's out in I think Nova Scotia, I believe. And I think he'll do a great job out there with that track.
Yeah, and Steve got to know him as a colleague in the Ontario Hockey League, calling games for the Guelph Storm. And it's funny how that comes full circle as well. Someone who had a interest in a family background in horse racing ending up there at Hanover Raceway. I was pretty disappointed to see that came to an end with his time at Hanover. I think he did a real nice job there over the last few years. So I think Truro has gained a real bright spot that can come and help them hopefully have a great season and continue to build off of that going forward. It's tough now that Steve won't be calling games for the Guelph Storm, because usually my visits to the Sleeman Center, a good chunk of the time before the game was talking racing with him. So I wish him nothing but the best. I've been in some contact with him and likely going to contribute a little bit to Truro over this upcoming season to lend them a bit of a hand and hopefully be able to at least use some of my profile from Woodbine to help them grow their game.
Okay. Before we wrap this up, what are some big events coming up at Mohawk Woodbine in the next couple weeks for people that are watching or listening to this episode?
Yeah. Well, right now, live racing is going year round at Mohawk, standardbred racing. This week, at the end of March, we're on a little bit of a break, just taking a few days off before racing resumes on Saturday, April 1st. And then after that, it's racing every Monday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. 7 p.m. is the start time. As for big events, we really don't have anything out of the ordinary beside live racing, but that's still a lot of fun. You can come out, have dinner, or just come on out and watch the races. Like I said, we're going every Monday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Some of our big events later this season include the Pepsi North America Cup, which is the richest race for 3-year-old pacers in North America. That'll be happening on Saturday, June 17th. And summertime is probably the best time to be out there at Mohawk, right on the rail, taking in the great weather, watching the racing. As for the racing over at Woodbine Racetrack, the Thoroughbreds, they're opening on Saturday, April 22nd to kick off their 2023 season. So we're coming up on opening day there on what should be another big year. So a couple of dates to keep in mind, and getting on out to the track this summer at any point, I highly recommend it because it's a great day out.
Okay, definitely. And we're going to wrap this up, Mark. Just quick thoughts on the Hamilton Bulldogs relocating to Brantford for the next 3 seasons. And can Brantford be a regular OHL city again in the future? And where can my audience find you on social media? And tell some OHL fans why they should consider going up to the Harry Lumley Bayshore Arena for an OHL game.
All right, so a good three-parter to cap it off. I would
Yes,
say
yes.
for the Brantford topic, I think it's probably the best situation considering it was a bad situation, right? I think it's disappointing that the city of Hamilton doesn't seem to have enough belief in the OHL and in the sporting teams that they had there playing at the First Ontario Centre to find other accommodations or to consider, giving Michael Andlauer, who is the owner of the Hamilton Bulldogs and who at one point offered to put up a huge chunk of his own money to build a new arena, an arena that would have been very friendly to junior hockey, probably would have been the perfect capacity. The fact that they couldn't buy into that because they wanted the arena right downtown is very disappointing, because I'm sure Michael Andlauer, who is a very shrewd and successful businessman, he's not building an arena out in the middle of nowhere for nothing. I think the proposed location was going to be near Lime Ridge Mall. I'm sure he's had his people look into it and they've done their research and they were believers in it being successful. But obviously the city of Hamilton wants that focus downtown. And what do you do with First Ontario Centre, formerly Cops Coliseum? I don't know. It's outdated at this point. It needs a lot of renovations. So that's what's going to happen over the next 3 years. But it's too bad they couldn't have done that in phases. If you weren't going to build a new arena that would have been friendly to junior hockey with an owner who is willing to work alongside you, then why couldn't you have found a way to continue playing at a First Ontario Centre while the renovations happened? The New York Rangers play at a Madison Square Garden. That's one of the oldest arenas in North America, yet they never missed a season. They never missed a game while they did renovations. They did it piece by piece. And I think they could have done that on First Ontario Centre. So it's disappointing. And I guess it comes down to cities. Obviously, they need something downtown. And they thought this is how they have to do it in order to reimagine and to give some new life to First Ontario Centre. But just kind of following up on the Brantford topic, I think the fact now that Brantford came into the equation as a possible host city made a lot of sense. It's not too far for fans in Hamilton to travel. It's disappointing they won't have the team in their backyard, but if they still want to track it, they can go along. And Brantford seems like a market that, based on all the demand that there's been for season tickets so far, should be successful. And I think when this 3 seasons is up, I'm a believer that the Hamilton Bulldogs will, or I guess they'll be the Brantford Bulldogs at that moment, will not end up back in Hamilton. I truly believe that when it's all said and done, they will stay in Brantford, because I think the city of Brantford will do everything in their power to keep OHL hockey there. They've been wanting it for a while. There's been a lot of people yelling for it and hoping that day would come. And now it is. And I don't think they're going to let that opportunity pass by. They've already approved at council level to start looking into building a new arena. So I think with having those plans right there, and this 3-year window to at least be a test run, I think when it's all said and done, I think Brantford will be a permanent home for OHL hockey, and hopefully it is successful. As for how you can follow me on social media, I'm on Twitter with a couple of accounts, actually, as we talked about hockey and horses. You can find me at Mark14 McKelvie. McKelvie is my last name, how that's spelled there. That's usually where I'm posting a lot of my hockey content. And as for horse racing, you can follow me at Mohawk Mark M. So both of those channels there, hopefully providing you with some good information, keeping you up to date on whether that be attack or OHL hockey or horse racing at Woodbine and Mohawk. And as for Chris, you mentioned it, you've never made the trip to the Bayshore. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are listening here today or watching along that have never been to the Bayshore. I can sell it to you in one word, and that's atmosphere. It's an electric atmosphere, especially on a Saturday night when the Attack are at home. Maybe if they're even playing a Midwest Division rival, it's got a little extra hop in the building. But it's just a tremendous building to see junior hockey. It's got a lot of character. And like I said, the community, it's a wonderful community up there. Very welcoming, very friendly, but passionate about their team. They'll make a lot of noise. And again, it's got that kind of character that we don't have in some of the newer buildings. So I highly recommend anybody checking it out, getting up to the Bayshore. And while you're up there, there's a lot to do in Owen Sound. There's a lot of real nice wonders out there naturally, and some real nice businesses and restaurants as well to check out. So I think it's should be on anybody, a hockey fan's bucket list, to get up there to see a game.
Definitely, and I'm looking forward to going up to Owen Sound, but also to Brantford as well, because I remember when Brantford had a team from '78 to '84, the Brantford Alexanders, and Bob Probert, and they had some other guys. I'm trying to remember. Uh, Dave Draper was a head coach, so I'm really excited for Brantford, and I'm excited for Owen Sound because I think this Owen Sound series against London is going to be tremendous as well. But hey, Mark, please say hi to your family for me, Scott, your dad Scott, and your mom Lori, and Tamara. I talked to the other day; she was at a Raptors Pistons game, so she wanted me to quickly mention her on the podcast. But say hi to all your family, and I miss being around you guys, and I really appreciate you coming on my 257th episode in 3 years.
Absolutely. I appreciate the invitation anytime, Chris. And I'm sure we'll see you around, maybe even at the Sleeman Center pretty soon.
Yes, I'll be working one of the games next week against Cerny as a camera operator as well. And I'll let you know when this show airs on my radio station, WQEE 99.1 FM, the key in the Metro Atlanta. That is a cheap plug. And they have hockey on their station as well, the Columbia River Dragons of the Federal Prospects League.
Oh, there you go. That's great. Well, I'll keep at it. Love tracking along and seeing who your guests are, and wish you nothing but the best, Chris. Keep it up.
Well, thank you so much, Mark, and we'll definitely keep in touch. And good luck to the Owen Sound attack against the London Knights. Thank you so much again, Mark, for coming on.
Thank you.
All right, guys, that was season 5, episode 37 with Mark McKelvie, the longtime TV play-by-play voice of the Owen Sound attack of the OHL. He also occasionally does some radio work for CFOS 560 in Owen Sound, and he's also the communications content manager for Woodbine Entertainment Group as well, guys. And the London Owen Sound series starts Friday night, 7 o'clock from Budweiser Gardens. Game 2 is Sunday afternoon in London, and then 3 and 4 are next Tuesday and Thursday up at the Bay Shore Arena in Owen Sound, Ontario as well. And some notes from that series: the teams have faced each other 7 times in the playoffs history in the OHL. London has won 5 of those first 7 meetings, but the Attack have won 2 out of the last 3 playoff meetings, and this year the team split the season series 3-3 as well, guys. I am doing another OHL podcast this Thursday. The next live with CDP Sports Talk, brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet. Season 5, episode 38 will be Thursday, March 30th at 9 p.m. Eastern with guest Alan Imensky. He's the TV play-by-play announcer for the OHL's Kingston Frontenacs on Your TV Kingston, and he also does some play-by-play for the RCM Paladins, a Royal College military hockey team there as well. So looking forward to speaking to Alan about the Kingston Frontenacs and his broadcasting career. So I hope you guys can tune in to season 5, episode 38, this Thursday night at 9 o'clock again with Alan Emetsky, the play-by-play voice for the Kingston Frontenacs as well, guys. And as always, guys, you can listen to WQEE 99.1 FM, the key in Metro Atlanta, at their website. Just type in WQEEFM.radio 12345.com, and yours truly show is on weeknights at 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock there as well. Before we wrap up this show, guys, as always, live with actually I hit the wrong graphic. We'll do this anyways. You guys can follow my website at beacons.ai/Chris D. Palme. That's beacons.ai/Chris D. Palme. And as always, live with CDP Sports Talk is live streamed on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And thank you to everyone for watching me on my live stream platforms as well. Live with CDP Sports Talk, again, is brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, or give them a call at 519-824-0210, or email them at info@barrycullen.com. You can also follow me on TikTok at Live with CDP. I post a lot of content on TikTok as well. StreamYard is the official live stream provider of Live with CDP Sports Talk. If you're into webinars or podcasting, highly recommend StreamYard as well. And again, Live with CDP Sports Talk is produced by yours truly, Chris Pame, CDP Media Productions 2023. And finally, guys, Live with CDP Sports Talk podcast. The audio version is available on iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, Castbox, LinkedIn, Stitcher, and Tuned In, and also again on WQEE 99.1 FM, The Key, weeknights at 8 o'clock in Metro Atlanta as well. Also, guys, you can email Live with CDP Sports Talk at cpame19@gmail.com, or you can text the show at 519-820-7188 with questions, comments, etc. as well. And you guys can also follow me on LinkedIn and Facebook. And also, guys, you guys can subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. And that's about it, guys. Again, I want to say thank you to my guest, Mark McKelvie, for coming on today and talking about the Owen Sound attack and previewing the OHL playoffs as well. So, again, thanks to Mark McKelvie for coming on. And guys, just give me about 15-20 minutes. I'll have this episode downloaded to all my audio platforms as well. So that's about it. I hope you guys all have a great evening. And thank you for watching and listening to Live with CDP Sports Talk. And my next show again is this Thursday, March 30th at 9 p.m. Eastern with Alan Aminsky, the TV play-by-play announcer for the Ontario Hockey League's Kingston Frontenacs for season 5, episode 38. I hope everybody has a great afternoon, great evening, and we'll see you guys Thursday night, 9 o'clock for another edition of Live with CDP Sports Talk. Again, brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet here in Guelph. Have a great evening, everybody, and thanks again for watching and listening to Live with CDP Sports Talk, and also on WQEE 99.1 FM, The Key.
Live.